Fighting you holds no appeal for most wild animals. Offered the choice, nearly all of them would happily move through an entire day without ever registering that you exist. And nearly every dangerous encounter on record happened because a person did something, on purpose or otherwise, which left the animal with no route out other than responding. One category, though, operates on completely different rules. There are creatures that will not wait around for provocation, will not bother with a threat display, will not offer you even a growl of warning or a bluff charge before everything goes badly wrong. They see you. Half a second goes by while the fact of your existence gets processed, and at the end of that half second, they are already in motion toward you, with an eagerness implying they had been hoping for precisely this since breakfast. So here they are, 10 wild animals that come at you instantly. We'll open at number 10 with the northern goshawk, a large and powerful raptor inhabiting forests throughout North America, Europe, and Asia, which almost nobody has heard of, and which the few who have tend to speak about in the hushed, respectful register, usually saved for natural disasters and especially difficult ex-partners. It runs about 2 feet long, carries a wingspan somewhere between 3.5 and 4 feet, has piercing red-orange eyes, and wears slate-gray plumage, lending it a severe, faintly judicial air. It has the look of a bird that arrived at a guilty verdict some considerable time ago, and is presently weighing up an appropriate sentence. On an ordinary day, this is a secretive forest hunter taking squirrels and rabbits and grouse and other birds through an ambush technique that involves threading between dense trees at remarkable speed, carrying a fighter pilot's agility and the disposition of a creature that has never once across its whole life experienced a moment of self-doubt. The trouble begins during nesting season, running roughly from March into July, at which point the goshawk expands its personal definition of threat to cover every living creature entering the broad vicinity of the tree holding its nest. That radius can run several hundred ft, and the bird polices that radius with a degree of violence that is honestly startling from something the average person could not identify in a lineup. There is no warning from a nesting goshawk. It won't wheel above your head screaming at you. What happens is that it comes in behind you, silently, flat out, and connects with the back of your skull, using talons built to punch through the head of a rabbit, hard enough to put grown people on their knees. Reports of these hits come from hikers, from trail runners, from loggers, from wildlife researchers, and in every account there was no earlier sign that a bird was anywhere nearby. And the wounds themselves, a scalp cut open, punctures driven through an ear or into the neck, damage requiring stitches in more than a handful of cases, all of it arrives before the person on the receiving end has understood that anything at all is underway. One forest ecologist in Montana, struck mid-bird survey, described it as taking a stapler to the head thrown by somebody who dislikes you personally, and mentioned that the bird had already swung round for a second run before he managed to lift his arms across his face. The northern goshawk would prefer you nowhere near its nest, and its chosen method of conveying that preference is attacking you before you discover it holds any preference worth conveying. Number 9 on the list, the black mamba. Now, this animal lives in sub-Saharan Africa rather than roaming through anybody's American backyard. Its reputation for instant, seemingly unprovoked aggression sits so far beyond anything else among snakes that leaving it out here would feel dishonest. It is Africa's longest venomous snake, reaching 14 ft, and simultaneously the fastest snake anywhere on the planet, holding sustained speeds of 12 mph over open ground, which sounds unimpressive right up until you register that 12 mph beats what most people can manage while running terrified, wearing sandals, and scrambling across the sort of uneven, scrubby ground a black mamba treats as home. Sense a human coming and most snakes remove themselves from the area. This one frequently doesn't. It holds position, lifts the forward third of its body clear of the ground, occasionally by 3 or 4 feet, putting its head level with the chest of an average adult, opens that ink-black mouth into a threat display that means exactly what it appears to mean, and then strikes, and strikes again. A single encounter can produce several bites in rapid sequence, each one delivering a potent mixture of neurotoxins and cardiotoxins, which, with no anti-venom available, kills close to 100% of the people envenomated, death arriving within 20 minutes at the severe end. Communicating how fast that strike happens is nearly impossible. The head moves quicker than a human eye, tracks reliably, and people who survived describe never having seen the bite occur, only feeling an impact and then looking down at punctures with nothing to account for them. A herpetologist who spent years handling black mambas down in South Africa called the species the one snake I have ever handled that I truly believe would come after me if I turned my back and ran, adding that this snake's attack response is so rapid and so total that most victims have been bitten 2 or 3 times, with the snake already drawing back for another go before they have processed what is underway. Sitting at number 8, the bull shark. Measured by unprovoked attacks on people, no shark is more dangerous, an animal whose whole evolutionary approach reduces to biting first and investigating never. They occupy warm coastal water worldwide, and alone among the large shark species, they tolerate fresh water and genuinely thrive in it. Individuals have turned up hundreds of miles inland along the Mississippi, in Lake Nicaragua, inside suburban canal systems in South Florida, and throughout rivers along the Gulf Coast, which means open ocean does not contain them. They are swimming in precisely the water where people wade, fish, swim, and comfortably assume that nothing carrying 300 teeth is paying them any attention. Full-grown, a bull shark measures 7 to 11 feet, carries anywhere from 200 to 500 lb, and hunts in water that is shallow, murky, and low on visibility, which plays to every advantage it holds and removes every advantage you had. They are territorial, they are highly aggressive, and they carry testosterone levels higher than anything else ever measured in an animal, bull elephants in musth included, which explains a fair amount about why their standing response to any ambiguous situation is to attack rather than to observe. A great white will occasionally let a human go after one investigatory bite. A bull shark bites, and then keeps on biting, shaking its head to inflict maximum tissue damage, a feeding pattern implying nothing exploratory is happening here at all. A surfer in Florida, bitten while he sat on his board in water up to his waist, described it as instantaneous. Nothing bumped him first, nothing circled, no shadow passed, no warning of any description arrived. "I was sitting out there looking at the waves," he said, "and a second later something had hold of my leg and was taking me under, and I hadn't worked out a shark was involved until I was already fighting the thing. A bull shark performs no assessment of you whatsoever. It delivers no curious test bite of the kind a great white sometimes offers. It commits completely. It commits immediately. And it does all of that with the absolute certainty of a creature which has never once entertained the notion that biting something might be the wrong reaction to meeting it. Number 7 brings us the hippopotamus. A creature that is featured on so many of our lists by now that it ought to be collecting residuals, and which nevertheless earns the position every single time, because no other large mammal anywhere on this planet matches a hippo for instant, explosive, apparently motiveless violence. A fully grown bull runs $3,000 to $4,000 does 20 map on land, quick enough to run most humans down with margin to spare, and can hurl itself clear of the water at a speed and with an explosive force grotesquely at odds with both its body shape and its general air of sedentary herbivorous contentment. A hippo doesn't charge because you posed a threat to it. A hippo charges because you happen to be inside a perimeter it drew unilaterally, one that can shift at any second according to criteria no human being has ever managed to predict or comprehend. Fishermen on rivers throughout sub-Saharan Africa describe these attacks as arriving with nothing in front of them. Water erupts. Then $4,000 lb of animal is either below your boat or above it, and working out which hardly matters, because either version puts you in the water next to something that opens its jaws through 150 degrees and bites a 12-ft aluminum boat straight through the middle, something it has managed on more than one occasion across several rivers on that continent. The annual estimate across Africa sits at 500 human deaths, ahead of every other large land animal there. And the bulk of those were nothing to do with defense. They were a hippo concluding, inside a fraction of 1 second, that some nearby thing needed to stop existing, then turning that conclusion into fact at a speed and with a commitment that leaves no opening for negotiation, for escape, or for appeal. A hippo does not attack you out of fear. It attacks you because attacking is, so far as anybody has managed to establish, something it enjoys actively and with real enthusiasm. At number 6, the cassowary. Big, flightless, native to tropical forest through New Guinea and the northeast of Australia. Height reaching 6 feet, weight running 100 to 130 lb, a neck in vivid blue and red, a casque on the skull shaped like a helmet, and eyes conveying nothing at all beyond a flat, unblinking, prehistoric proposition that you shouldn't be standing here. The weapon that matters is a dagger-shaped claw of 5 in on the inner toe of either foot, driven downward through a kick powerful enough to open a dog up, to punch through a car door, and on no fewer than 2 confirmed occasions, to kill a person. Warnings, in the sense that most large animals provide them, simply do not feature here. There is no bluff charge. Nothing is vocalized. It doesn't inflate itself to look larger. What happens is that it works out you're too close, and a moment later, it's coming at you doing 30 mph, head down, that claw out in front. By the time the visual information is finished processing, which your brain finds difficult because what sits in front of it looks like a brightly colored dinosaur coming through a rainforest and matches nothing your nervous system holds on file as a threat, the whole encounter is over. Keepers who work with them routinely rate cassowaries among the most dangerous creatures in their charge, placing them over big cats and over bears on the grounds that a cassowary brings together an absence of fear, an absence of hesitation, and an absence of any interest in a second chance, alongside a biological weapon that opens a human abdomen with one kick. One handler working in Queensland called it the single bird that has ever left me feeling like prey, and he meant it with no exaggeration and no humor in it at all. If this countdown is working for you, early access to every loving feral video is waiting over on our Spotify channel. There's a link sitting down in the description for you. Number 5 belongs to the Wolverine. somewhere between 30 and 40 lb of weasel family, assembled like a small bear that somebody put through a compressor, reinforced structurally, then topped up with a seemingly bottomless reservoir of tightly focused hostility, directed at everything which isn't a Wolverine, and fairly regularly at things which are. Their range takes in boreal forest, tundra, and mountain country throughout the north of North America, plus Scandinavia and Siberia, and the record on them shows a documented, verified, repeatedly witnessed readiness to take on animals 10 times their mass or heavier: wolves, cougars, full-grown black bears. No desperation involved, no defense of young. Purely because a wolverine noticed something it wanted, found a larger animal positioned between itself and that item, and treated the situation as the larger animal's difficulty rather than its own. Researchers in Glacier National Park recorded one walking straight over to a black bear busy with an elk carcass, snarling into its face, and declining to withdraw until the bear, 10 times its mass and theoretically capable of settling the matter with one swipe, judged the carcass not worth the argument and left. No ambush was involved. The bear was neither distracted nor injured. A wolverine strolled over to a healthy adult black bear, out in the open, in full daylight, and picked a fight using nothing whatsoever except undiluted force of personality. A wolverine that meets a human out in the wild will seldom attack unprovoked. When they do, usually when cornered, when guarding a cache of food, or when a female has kits she's protecting, what follows is immediate, ferocious, and delivered by jaws capable of crushing frozen bone and claws that go through packed snow and ice. An Alaskan wildlife biologist who came close to a female near her den site described her shift from noticing him to full attack as nothing to absolute violence inside 1 second, adding that 15 ft of open ground was already behind her before he had his bear spray up at chest height. A wolverine never works out whether a fight is winnable. It works out whether a fight is wanted. And the answer, judging by every scrap of evidence science has assembled, is almost invariably yes. Number 4, and it's the saltwater crocodile. Earth's largest living reptile and an ambush predator built so flawlessly for instantaneous explosive violence that the core attack strategy has gone essentially unaltered across more than 200 million years, for the simple reason that it has never required improvement. Mature males stretch out to 20 feet and push past 2,000 LOB, and the hunting method consists of lying utterly still in shallow water. For hours at a stretch, occasionally for a whole day, occasionally right beside a footpath, a riverbank, a boat ramp that people use as a matter of routine until it throws itself at whatever it picked out with a burst of speed, clearing 20 meters across a short distance. None of what follows is a chase. It's a detonation. The animal erupts upward out of the water, shuts its jaws on the target at a bite force past $3,700 LOB per square in, harder than anything else ever measured on a living animal, then hauls its catch beneath the surface to drown it via the death roll, rotating its entire body around the long axis so as to disorient its prey and tear tissue away. Nothing ever gets released. No moment of hesitation arrives, no reassessment of the situation. Once one of these has committed to an attack, no method available to an unarmed person will talk it out of the decision, and the complete sequence, motionless log through to closed jaws, occupies under half a second. Across a range taking in northern Australia, Southeast Asia, and the Western Pacific, saltwater crocodiles are estimated to kill 1,000 people every year. Those who live through an attack report the same thing every time. The crocodile was never visible. It made no sound. Nothing disturbed the water beforehand. And the earliest sign anything had changed was the feeling of being taken hold of by something enormously strong, coming from a direction they weren't facing and had no cause to watch. Number 3 goes to the African buffalo, known just as often as the Cape buffalo. An animal weighing 1,500 to 2,000 lb, standing nearly 6 feet at the shoulder, carrying fused horns shaped like a helmet, forming a thick bony shield across the top of the skull, known as a boss, which it employs to gore, to toss, and to trample whatever it reads as a threat. That category covers lions, hyenas, safari vehicles, plus any human unlucky enough to occupy the wrong patch of ground. At the moment a buffalo concludes it has had enough of something or other, that thing can be anything at all, and the moment can arrive whenever. Roughly 200 people die to Cape buffalo across Africa each year, and among professional hunters and safari guides, it holds the position of most dangerous animal in the Big Five, ahead of the lion, ahead of the elephant, ahead of the leopard. The reason is that a Cape buffalo signals absolutely nothing beforehand, standing motionless chewing grass one moment, at full charge in under 2 seconds. And it comes with the head down and those enormous horns aimed forward, eating up ground at 35 mph, and a precision indicating it isn't trying to frighten you off, but trying to connect with you, squarely through the center of mass. And connecting is what usually ends up happening. A professional guide in Zimbabwe with 30 years spent around dangerous game called the Cape buffalo the animal that comes back, observing that most large animals will disengage once whatever they perceived as a threat has been neutralized or has stopped moving, whereas a wounded or furious buffalo loops around, finds you again, and comes in from a new angle, repeating that until one of the two of you has died. Documented instances exist of these animals going back to bodies they had already killed and goring them a second time, seemingly for confirmation. This animal treats attacking not as a last resort, but as the opening move, and it comes back afterward to verify the outcome. At number 2, the honey badger. An animal weighing roughly 25 to 35 pounds, standing about 10 inches at the shoulder, carrying a reputation so wildly out of proportion to its physical dimensions that the whole thing would be ridiculous, were every last piece of it not entirely, meticulously, scientifically verified. You find honey badgers throughout sub-Saharan Africa, across the Middle East, and over the Indian subcontinent, and by essentially every behavioral metric science has built to measure such things. They are the least fearful animal alive. Cape cobras get attacked. So do puff adders. So do spotted hyenas. There is documented footage of them charging full-grown male lions, not running from lions, not reluctantly standing firm in front of lions, but advancing on lions with unmistakably hostile intent, at which point the lions, carrying something like 15 times the weight, gave ground. That sentence has no business making sense, and yet it does. Honey badger skin is thick, loose and rubbery, near enough impervious to bee stings, to porcupine quills, even to a good many snake bites. And it hangs so loose that when a predator seizes the scruff of its neck, the grip that immobilizes most mammals, the badger simply rotates inside its own hide and bites the attacker in the face. A defensive mechanism so aggressively oriented that it feels biologically implausible, and which has nonetheless been watched and recorded repeatedly. One Kalahari researcher who spent more than 10 years on honey badgers called them the single animal I have watched that seems to hunt for conflict deliberately, observing that the badgers across her study area would go and investigate, then confront, animals and objects and situations which any sane weighing of risk says to leave well alone. She also noted that in a full decade of watching them, she had not once seen anything from a honey badger that could be read as fear. No caution shown, no hesitation, not one moment spent weighing the odds before committing to something. A honey badger does not attack because its options ran out. It attacks because attacking is simply the factory default here, and no quantity of size difference, of common sense, or of elementary survival instinct has ever persuaded it to reconsider. Which brings us to number 1, the animal that comes at you fastest, most dependably, and needing the least apparent reason of any of them. The Nile crocodile. Its saltwater cousin grows larger, a black mamba covers ground quicker, a hippo behaves with less predictability, but this animal assembles the worst attribute of every other entry on the list into one package: explosive speed, crushing physical power, no warning issued in advance, total commitment the moment it starts, not a trace of hesitation anywhere in the sequence. All of it inside a single ambush predator running 16 FT and 1,500 LB, one that has spent 65 million years taking large mammals along the edges of water, and it has no plan to stop, either today or at any later point. Nothing else in the crocodilian family kills more people, an estimated 300 to 1,000 annually throughout sub-Saharan Africa. And the hunting technique is so refined, so efficient, so breathtakingly fast that calling it an attack almost overstates the time involved. A Nile crocodile doesn't attack you. It simply turns up wherever you happen to be, on the riverbank where the washing gets done, beside the waterhole where your jugs get filled each morning, at the shallow crossing that has been safe on 100 previous occasions, then one explosive hydraulic movement, and it has you. The strike itself takes roughly 50 milliseconds. For comparison, a human being needs 300 milliseconds simply to blink. Its jaws have already closed on your limb, you are already going under and already rolling, and none of it has reached the point where your brain finishes registering that a single thing around you has changed. One biologist who put 20 years into studying how Nile crocodiles hunt along the Zambezi described them as the closest evolution has come to a flawless ambush predator, adding that in his entire career spent watching them directly, he had never on any occasion whatsoever seen a target animal register that crocodile before the strike was already underway. You don't see it coming. You don't hear it coming either. You don't feel the water shift or catch a shadow or pick up any of those small environmental signals your brain depends on to keep you breathing. Because this animal has spent longer perfecting that precise moment than most of the species in this countdown have spent existing at all. It doesn't attack you instantly. It had already finished before instantly got started. If you've stayed with me this far, thanks for watching. Early access to loving feral videos coming up is available over on our Spotify channel with a link waiting in the description. If this one worked for you, feel free to like it, subscribe, or pass it to somebody who needs reminding that certain animals have no belief in the concept of fair warning at all. See you next time.